Yeah, so if coming up with a Bible lesson seems daunting, maybe you're teaching your own kids and they just kind of zone out and you're trying to get them plugged in, or maybe you're teaching other people's kids and you're looking for a way for Bible stories to completely come alive and grab their attention. This is for you. So whether you're teaching your own kids inside of your home as part of your homeschool curriculum, or you're teaching the pastor's kids, or you're teaching kids that have never been to church before, I'm going to give you 6 steps on how to take your lesson planning from stressful to a lot of fun. Most importantly, this is going to help you really impact the lives of the little ones that God has entrusted into your care. If you're new here, welcome. I am Tanya Johnson. I am a homeschool and ministry consultant, and I specialize with working with parents and youth leaders behind the scenes who are focused on building that solid foundation for our next generation. I believe it's incredibly important to stay ahead of the crowd when it comes to keeping our kids' attentions. The world is constantly fighting for their hearts, so we need to be fighting just as hard. If you're watching this on YouTube, every freebie that I talked about is going to be linked below in the description area. If you're watching this as part of a homeschool summit or a ministry summit, then go to the page that all the information is being shared on, and there will be a link for all of the freebies, additional trainings, anything that I mentioned inside of this video. Now, first thing you're going to want to do when this video is over is you're going to want to go check out our social media for further training and further freebies when it comes to parenting and ministry. Okay, so how do we create a lesson plan that not only tells the Bible lesson, but it is guaranteed to wow any audience of any age? It's actually super simple. So the first thing is obviously going to be praying. We need to be praying over the story or the topic that we're going to be choosing. We need to be praying for an illustration to come along our path that's just going to wow the kids. And we need to be praying that God is going to speak directly to their hearts through us, because it does not matter how much amount of preparation that we can give on our own strength. God is going to be a way better teacher and a way better planner than we ever could be when it comes to reaching them. And yes, even if you're just teaching your own kids the Bible stories at home, this is just as important for you. Now, as a teacher who not only teaches my own child, but teaches kids and teens outside of the classroom, this is something that I was very much convicted a couple of years ago, that I would put all of the extra time and resources into my classrooms and into other people's children. And then sometimes I'd find myself being guilty of when I was at home doing devotions with my own daughter or teaching a Bible story to her as part of our homeschool curriculum. I would just open up the book and start kind of like reading the story, letting her color, do whatever, but I didn't put near as much time and effort into teaching her as I was other people's kids. And that's something that God really convicted me of, because he gave me this little person in my home to teach. So she should be the one I'm putting above and beyond when it comes to time and effort into, if you're going to compare that to what I do for other people's kids. So that kind of lit my fire in teaching other parents how to do the same thing. Doesn't have to break the bank. It does not have to be super stressful, but putting as much time into our own kids as we do other people's kids is going to speak volumes when they can look back on their childhood. Maybe they've seen you inside of a classroom. Maybe they've seen you teach Sunday school. Maybe they've seen you do junior church. And then they compare that to what they got at home. And it's going to speak volumes when they can see you put just as much time and effort into them as you did all of their friends at church. So step number 1 is pray. Step number 2 is choose a Bible story or choose a topic that you're going to teach on. Now, this is a super short point, because literally you're going to pick the topic or pick the Bible story and you're going to move on. There's not any need to overthink this. All the stories in the Bible are awesome. They all have really good applications when it comes to our families. And it could be that you're teaching through a curriculum where the topic or the Bible story is already chosen for you. You just need to beef it up a little bit to kind of give it that wow factor. And number 3 is a little bit harder. It's a little bit longer. And that is choose a length of time that is age appropriate. Now, the standard here in the teaching world is 2 to 3 minutes per year of age when it comes to the child. So a 6-year-old would have 12 to 18 minutes. A 4-year-old, you're going to have 8 to 12 minutes. Like, you're going to have kind of a window. Now, as a parent, a little bit easier. We know our kids better than anybody. We know how long they can sit still realistically without kind of going crazy. We know how their attention span works. When you're getting into a Sunday school class or a junior church class, then it's a little bit trickier because you have kids from all walks of life. So I'm going to kind of give you a ballpark of what that would look like if you have a room full of 6 to 11-year-olds, which is like the standard junior church age. Then the time frame you're going to want to work with is 15 to 20 minutes max. Now, you're going to have a little bit less with some of the kids who maybe they've not been in church for very long. They have a whole lot of screen time at home. That plays a huge part into how much time you have before you kind of lose them. On the flip side, if you have kids that have grown up in church their entire life, they may have a little bit more discipline to sit and pretend that they're listening because they've been in church their whole life. Now, that does not mean that they are paying attention or absorbing longer than 15 to 20 minutes. You literally are just getting them to pretend longer because they're used to sitting still. And then something else you want to keep in mind is that 15 to 20-minute window is not for you to speak the entire time. A good teacher is not only going to be hands-on when it comes to the lesson, the illustration, all the stuff that goes into it, but they're going to be able to teach to all 4 different learning styles during that 15 to 20-minute window. Because your goal is not to reach the kid that sits there and is quiet and listens to everything. Your goal is to reach that child that typically gets in trouble during junior church, and you are the one that God is bringing this lesson across your desk so you can learn how to teach that child more effectively. If you can reach him, you can reach everyone else in your junior church or your Sunday school class. Now, the good news is, regardless of the amount of kids you have or kind of the demographic that plays into it, the more hands-on and the more creative you are with your lesson, the more time that you earn back from those kids when it comes to how much they're going to focus and pay attention to you. Now, if you're a parent and you're watching this, I want you to go ahead and after this video, head over to the corresponding blog that is attached to this. I have a free quiz that you can take with your child that is going to help pinpoint their learning style. And then I also have a free training on how to make devotions at home fun when it comes to how to create like crafts and different things that all theme around the devotion. Now, if you're a Sunday school teacher or you're a junior church leader and you want to go look at that, you're more than welcome to. I am just going to put the caveat out there that it was designed intentionally for parents. So some of the things are not going to apply. However, a lot of the stuff, for example, in the how to make the devotions not boring will apply if you're doing a small group Sunday school class of like 5 to 10 kids max. Now, number 4 is you are going to identify one life application that you want the kids to remember. So this is going to be either one statement, max it can be 2 to 3 points if you're doing like an alliteration, which is where like each thing starts with one letter. So it's, again, super easy for them to memorize. The whole goal when they leave is to be able to, yes, remember parts of the Bible story, but how can they take what they learned and actually apply it right away in real life? And are they going to remember what you talked about 4 days from now when they're sitting in public school and they're being bullied and they're hearing their teacher talk about evolution and they're just getting all this stuff left and right to them? Are they going to remember what you talked about on Sunday, or is it just going to be like a distant memory? Now, at the end of this video, I'm going to show you a real life lesson my husband and I did in a junior church setting. We've done it multiple times at this point, but we recently taught it this year again to a new group of kids. And it worked the exact same way it has every single time that we've taught it, even though this group of kids came from a whole different culture than the group that we're used to teaching. So I just want to tell you that, because when you craft a really good lesson, you can teach it to any age group across any demographic, which is making very tiny minor tweaks to fit the size of the class as well as the background or any learning disabilities that might be present. Now, if you're a parent watching this at home, it's even cooler for you to be able to get to do the one life application or the 2 and 3 points that make up a life application, because you know firsthand what your child is struggling with. So you purposely can pick an application that speaks to them directly, versus if you're teaching a class, yes, you're praying for God's guidance. And of course, whatever illustration that he gives you or whatever life application probably is going to reach 2 or 3 of those kids because you're relying on God's leading to come up with that point. But when you're doing it at home, you can be sure that that is 100% what your child needs, because again, you know your child better than anybody else. So just keep in mind when you're teaching Bible stories, and I know it can get a little bit, I feel like I don't even want to say this, it's going to be looked at as blaspheme, but we are real and raw right here. My daughter's 9, almost 10. I can tell you I've taught her pretty much every single Bible story 3 times at this point. Sometimes it does get a little monotonous when you're teaching the same Bible story that you know she knows. Obviously, you know, and you're teaching it for the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th time. But when you follow these steps and you make it new and exciting, then you're showing your kid that the Bible is exciting and that God speaks differently every single time that you read it, regardless how well you know the story. But to get that point across when they're kids, we as the parent, we have to take time to make that story come alive over and over and over again and relate to different parts of their life every time that we're teaching it. Now, number 5, and this is a big one, and I will tell you, if you're doing it at home, this becomes a little bit easier. If you're doing this in a small church with less resources, it's a little bit harder. If you're doing it with a larger church with larger resources, you kind of have a double-edged sword because some of these will be easy, some will be hard, and that is use as many of the 5 senses as you possibly can. The effective teacher reaches every single category when it comes to the learning styles. And in order to do that, you're going to be hitting all 5 senses when you're teaching your lesson. So I'm just going to give you a few ideas on how to hit this when it comes to Bible stories. The first one is sight. Sight is relatively simple. You're going to use a big screen if you have it. You might put a little cartoon on the background as they are coming in that has to do with the Bible story. You might put a slideshow during your lesson. If you are a smaller church, you don't have screens in your junior church, then you can do this as like giant flashcards. You can do flannel graph. We taught out of Abeka for a while. They have big story cards that go along with their Sunday school lessons. And then if we were going to teach a story in junior church, we would just go find the Sunday school teacher that had that story, and we would use their cards for the visual because we were part of a small church when we were doing the children's ministry. So we didn't have the big fancy screens. We had what we could bring with us to set up our children's church. And at the end of the day, we took it down. It was not in one room. We had outgrown our children's church room. So we were using a gymnasium, which meant everything in there had to come down at the end of the service and had to be put up before the service. So we got pretty crafty with how to use the 5 senses, and there's nothing wrong with that. If you have a building and you've got a big screen up in front of the kids and you've got a worship stage, that's awesome. But if you're watching this and you're like, well, I can't do it as good as that person because our church is smaller, no, you can absolutely do it as good as that person. And again, I'm going to show you in a minute, you're going to have some pros and cons, where a smaller church can do things a little bit better in certain areas, where a larger church can do things better in other areas. And then, like I said, if you're a parent at home watching this and you're doing this with your own family and your own kids, you can check all the boxes because you're doing it in your own home. So you've got the TV you can use. You've got the hands-on stuff you can do with your kids in front of you. You can do literally as much or as little as you want to. Now, another really good resource, and I'm going to put it up on the screen as well, is the Generations Company. I think it's generations.org. They have a devotional book. They have a new one for each grade. The pictures are phenomenal. They've got discussion questions. That is one I'd absolutely recommend if you are teaching Bible stories at home to your kids and you want the visual aspect. But then also if you're doing a small group or a Sunday school class, that actually would translate for them as well. Now, after sight, we have hearing. So this is a really good one to throw a song in there that has something to do with the lesson or the life application that goes along with the lesson. So many lessons have songs that go directly with them, but some don't, and that's fine. So you're going to pick a song that has something to do with like the life application that you're teaching them. A couple examples are if you're teaching the story of Zacchaeus, obviously the song would be Zacchaeus was a wee little man. If you are teaching the story of the 99 and 1 when it comes to the sheep, and that's actually the lesson I'm going to touch on because we've taught that multiple times. A good song, very simple to go along with that, is just Jesus Loves Me. That's a really easy, simple song that goes along with that story when you're talking about how God loves all of us individually, so much so that when one of us goes astray, he comes out looking for us. And then as your child gets older and understands the fact that God is omnipresent, then you can that story a little bit deeper meaning than just Jesus loves me enough to come find me. You can talk about how in the parable, Jesus left the flock to go find the one. In real life, today, God's omnipresent. He doesn't have to leave anyone to go find anybody else because he's with all of us all the time. So again, a lot deeper story, not something you would teach to your preschooler or to your kindergartner, but when your kids go up to teenagers, then absolutely you're going to put a little bit more theology behind your lessons. It's not just going to be that simple, oh, look, Jesus left and went and found that one sheep. Jesus loves me. So you can play around with it. You can find songs that go with every single Bible lesson, regardless what age you're teaching. Now, with smell and taste, the easiest way to do this is through food. I know a lot of children's pastors are going to hear food. Absolutely not. But hear me out. Giving kids themed snacks, even if it's something they can take home with them, you don't want them eating it in the actual room, is going to go a long way with reinforcing that lesson. I'll never forget, we taught Moses parting the Red Sea. Now, at this time, we were at a small church. We only had a group of kids of like 22 to 25 every week. So it would have been a lot different if we were teaching like 100 little ones at the same time. And we had 4-year-old through 5th grade. So we had, oh, no, this church was 4-year-old through 6th grade. So we had a pretty wide age of kids. So we did not let them make these on their own. We got there before the service. We made them. And I'm going to try to put a picture up on the screen. I don't know if I will be able to find it, but Sorry, I knocked over my camera. I don't know if I'll be able to find it. I'm going to try to put a picture on here. But what we did is we took 2 graham crackers, well, 3 graham crackers. So we made it into like a box with the top off. And then those 3 graham crackers, we put blue icing on, we glued them together, they stayed. And then we put little fish sprinkles along the sides, and we put teddy bear grams going down the middle. And that was the snack that we gave them that day for the Israelites crossing the Red Sea as the Red Sea was parted, and they got to see like the fish on the side. I can tell you to this day, I have teenagers now who were kids when we taught that still remember that illustration, and it has stuck with them for, I won't tell you how many years because it just makes me feel old even thinking about that. But having a themed snack, and now that was an elaborate one. We absolutely did not do that every single week. Now I will tell you though, with my daughter, we do that at the end of every like lesson that we do. So usually once a week we'll have a themed snack. But I'm saying for like junior church, we did not do that every week. That was a lot of work. But we could do like the story of feeding the fish in the 5,000. We gave a quiet seat prize away that was just some goldfish. So it doesn't always have to be every single kid either. That is the best option, but sometimes that is not practical. So just think about how you can incorporate smell and taste into the lessons. Now at home, like I said, we do that a lot more often. So we recently, using graham crackers again, graham crackers seem to be a easy way to do this. We actually made the coat of many colors, and I'll put that up on the screen because we just did it with graham crackers, cream cheese frosting. Now I made my own. If I was doing this for a junior church, I would just bought tubs of it, but I just needed a little bit. So I just made a little bit with cream cheese and some heavy whipping cream, a little bit of sugar. And then M&Ms for the colors. And my daughter thought it was like the coolest thing ever. So you can always incorporate smell and taste just by doing something that has to do with a snack. Now for touch is going to be big on a craft and also during game time, which review games are huge. I'm going to talk about that in a minute as well. So number 6 is going to be plan it out. I'm going to put on the screen what I would do if I had a 1-hour service that I was trying to plan out, because this is the way that we operate. We've done children's church and youth groups for a little over 10 years at this point. So if I was planning out a children's church service or a teen service, my entire service would revolve around whatever Bible story I'm going to teach. So that means the opening game, the song time, the lesson, the craft, the snack, the review game. It is all going to be reinforcing that one application, or again, the 2 to 3 points that I made up as one application from whatever Bible story that we're going to teach for that lesson. Now, I'm not talking about youth groups that meet on Wednesday nights and you're doing all the fun stuff. I'm talking about like a Sunday school class or a children's church service where a central Bible story, a central topic is being talked about for that one lesson. Now, this particular part doesn't apply if you are teaching your own kid in your home quite as much. You're typically not sitting down with them for an hour, but you can take some of the pieces out of this and definitely put it in practice as well. Okay, so typically what we do is the first 15 to 20 minutes is literally going to be singing, worshiping. We might have some minute to win it games. Now, this part of the hour doesn't necessarily have to be themed. It can be if you can think of some songs that go a little bit along with the lesson. It doesn't have to be. Like I said, I'm going to take you through what we did for the 99 and 1. The first 15 to 20 minutes was not themed. We just had songs, minute to win it games, some fun like camaraderie time with the kids. Then when it was time to switch gears, because again, we have about an hour. So 15 minutes of that is just worship time. The kids kind of like settle down a little bit. And then the last 45 to 50 minutes is everything is themed around this lesson. So immediately after our song time is over, we go into intro mode, which is that wow factor that you're going to grab your kids' attention and it's going to have something to do with the lesson. So for the 99 and 1, we always do a sheep scavenger hunt. The kids love this. So we print out 10 sheep. Now the first one is labeled 1 through 10, the second one 11 through whatever. Like we don't print out 100 sheep. But before the kids come in, we tape these around the room under chairs, behind sound booths, whatever. And so when it's time to start, we start the first 10 minutes of junior church by having this really awesome scavenger hunt. The kids don't really know why we're having a scavenger hunt. They just know we're having one. There's a prize at the end for every kid that finds a sheep. And then we go on about our schedule. That takes about 10 minutes, and it's just a wow factor to automatically get their attention at the beginning of the class. And then as soon as the scavenger hunt is over, We're going to sing a couple more songs. Now, these usually are going to relate to the story of the 991. I picked that one on purpose to talk about because that one doesn't have like a Zacchaeus was a wee little man that like a song talks about the actual story. But we sing songs like Jesus Loves Me, Jesus Loves Even Me, I've Decided to Follow Jesus, just a few quiet songs where the central theme is keeping your eyes on Jesus and Jesus loving us. So we're going to sing 2 or 3 of those songs. Takes 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes, depending on how many verses, what songs you want to sing. Bonus points if you do have a screen behind you that you can put the lyrics on and you can overlay them over like a picture of a sheep or something. You don't have to have that. Again, we are putting as many senses into this as we possibly can. Some churches that we've taught this at did not have that option. Other churches, we've had the big, nice screen behind us and you feel like you just are in like $1 million church. So either way, you can still be effective with this, but use the resources that you have because they're there at your disposal. Now, the next 10 minutes is where we're going to do the lesson and the kids are going to eat their snack. So if you are going to use a snack, I like to do this during the lesson time because it keeps them relatively quiet while they're listening and they're focused on you while they're sitting there eating like they would be if they're watching a movie and eating some popcorn. Now, super easy snack that we have done for the 99 and 1 are sheep cupcakes. So they're literally cupcakes and then you have your normal little frosting on top and you stick marshmallows, mini marshmallows around. And then one marshmallow, you're gonna like color pink with like a cake pen or whatever those edible things are. And then a couple marshmallows you're gonna draw little eyeballs on. Super easy, super simple. The kids love it. And again, it just reinforces the lesson, which is all talking about the 99 and 1 sheep. Now, when it comes to actually teaching the lesson, this depends on your teaching style. How do you enjoy teaching? Now, also, yes, you're teaching to the 4 learning styles, but every teacher is going to deliver this differently. My husband and I are proof of this. We are very different teachers. I am a lot more, I'm going to stand in front of you and have slideshows, or I'm going to hold up pictures. He literally like acts this out. Every time he teaches us, he'll hide around the corner, act like he is like one of the sheep that's trying to be found, make noises. My daughter's sitting over here. We recently taught this and she was in the class when we taught it. The kids think it's hilarious. Sometimes kids even think there's a sheep back there. I don't know why. I don't think he actually sounds like a sheep. But again, a 6-year-old's gonna like interpret this a little different than I would be seeing this done multiple times already. And every time we teach this, we always add on and we learn from the last time that we taught it. Because again, there's only so many Bible stories, right, in the Bible. So every time you teach it, you're going to adapt not only to the new group of kids that you're teaching, but you're also going to remind yourself, okay, what went well last time I taught this and what could I have done better to keep their attention and make a little bit bigger impact with these kids that God has given me to teach. Now, a super easy review game for this, and we did not use this last time that we taught. The dynamics of this church were a little bit different than what we're used to, so there was someone else doing a review game, not the person teaching the lesson. But typically when we have taught this, and this game, kids just think it's awesome. All you need are white balloons. You can draw faces on them to look like sheep, or you can just pretend that they're sheep because they don't really need faces. White balloons that are blown up and on the floor in the middle. You need fly swatters. So 2 fly swatters, 1 for each team. You're going to divide your kids into 2 teams. So what's going to happen is your kids are going to be in lines. So team 1's going to be on one side of you. Team 2's going to be on the other side of you. And they're going to be facing you. So you're going to ask a question. As soon as you say go, the first 2 kids are going to be in line. The first one to answer that question correctly wins. And they get to take their fly swatter and go herd 1 sheep into the corral for their side. Now the corral could literally be tape on the floor. It could just be like a group of chairs sitting there, but they're going to herd their little sheep. And then both the front kids go to the back. The next kids in line get the fly swatters. They get asked a question. The first one to answer herds the sheep into their side. When all the kids have gone through one time, then the team that has the most sheep in their pen is the winner. Super easy, super simple, and the kids love it. Now you can do it where you go through 2 times. You can do it the most sheep in 10 minutes. You can set it up however you want to do it. We typically play the review game for 5 to 10 minutes. We very much are in tune to how well the kids are being receptive to it. If we're trying a new game specifically, and then we go on with the rest of our junior church lesson. Now, if you're doing this at home, chances are you're probably going to have 2, 3, 4 kids. You can do little teams like this. You can also do child against child, or you can do them against themselves. So you have 5 minutes to answer as many questions and herd as many sheep as you can, and then it's your brother's turn or sister's turn or however you're doing that. So you can definitely take that game and adapt it to doing an at-home Bible lesson also. And then the last 15 minutes, we typically will do a craft. So again, depending on the size and the materials that you have, if you have table set up, that kind of stuff, is going to determine the type of craft that you can do. For this one, we actually found a page on Oriental Trading that had the background of a pasture, and then it had a sticker sheet with a whole bunch of sheep, shepherds, and flowers, where they got to sit and like create their own shepherd sheep scene. And a lot of the kids thought that that was really cool. So hopefully that helps kind of tie it all together when it comes to those first 5 points on how to put a really exciting Bible lesson together. It really is not that hard as long as you start ahead of time. I tell people this all the time. You're going to want to plan these out 3 to 4 weeks in advance. You don't want to come to Sunday and then be like, okay, what am I going to teach next Sunday? You typically want to do this, again, 3 to 4 weeks out in advance. So if you are doing this for your home, get a calendar out and say, okay, this week I'm going to focus on this story, this story, this story, and then you're going to put all the pieces together. What I did for our junior church when we ran it is I did this a month in advance. So January 1st, I'd plan out all of the lessons that we were going to do in February, and then I'd start putting them together. February 1st, February is already done, I'd plan out all of March. And so any of our volunteers that we had working with us, they knew what the lessons were going to be. If I had someone who's going to help run a game, they knew what the game was and they knew how they were going to run it. Now, in addition, it's also good to have meetings with your volunteers if you're going to be working at junior church or a Sunday school class and get their input on it. Say, hey, this week we're focused on this topic or this Bible story. We need a themed craft. Does anyone have any ideas? Or does anyone want to volunteer to do that craft? We're going to need a themed game. Do we have any ideas? Like brainstorm with those people. If you're doing this at home and you have older kids, so let's say you've got 2 little ones running around and then you have 2 teenagers, you're probably not going to get like super excited about a fly swatter and some balloons, but let them sit and help you plan out the content that you're going to be teaching. And maybe you've got a teenage daughter. I just talked to one of my students. I had them here a couple of days ago with their mom, and they were talking about how Pinterest is very addicting and how they love to just lay in their rooms and scroll Pinterest. So this is an exciting way to be like, hey, I know you're really good on Pinterest. You scroll through a lot of things. Would you mind spending like 15 minutes and just looking for a game that has to do with whatever topic that we're teaching? I guarantee most teenage daughters are going to be like, yeah, absolutely. I'll go help you find this. Gives me an excuse to get on Pinterest, right? So there are definitely ways to bring your volunteers or your older kids or even your husband. Now, my husband's not going to scroll through Pinterest to find anything for me, but there are many times when I can remember we would go out on just a date night specifically to sit and brainstorm. And we'd leave Glory with a babysitter and we'd just be out to dinner and we'd be talking about the next 4 weeks of planning and what we were going to be teaching because we loved doing it so much. So this was not something that was like a chore, but it was something that he could say, hey, I've got this idea for a lesson, and I would kind of help him put it all together because we very much complement each other when it comes to our teaching styles, our illustrations, just how we kind of put things together. And then there'd be times that I would be working with a youth project because my specialty is teens, his is more so as kids. So again, we complement each other very well because we've done all ages. But I'd be working with a youth project and I'd be like, hey, I'm kind of stuck. I have this lesson that I want to do. I've got this application, but how do I kind of like push it over the top to get that wow factor? And he would think of something and be like, hey, maybe try this, or maybe bring this in as the illustration and like let the kids see hands-on, dot, dot, dot. Now, obviously that's my husband, but you can absolutely do that with volunteers or your older kids and like purposely once a month come together or once every other month or whatever and sit and talk about the calendar and have food and have just like that camaraderie time to where they feel like they're included versus kind of feeling like they're micromanaged to where it's like, hey, do this, this, and this. Make sure you're playing with your brothers and sisters on the game. Act like you're having fun. I need you to sing this song for service today. I need you to bring in these materials for this craft. Like not having that inclusion is really going to hurt the family dynamic, the classroom dynamic, whatever dynamic you're working with. So now you know what goes into preparing a really good lesson plan when it comes to teaching a Bible story. I want to leave you with this. Kids decide whether or not they're going to pay attention to you, whether or not you have earned the right for them to pay attention to you, within the first couple of seconds of you getting up in front of them. So if you have a lot of behavioral issues in your class, or you have a lot of issues at home with behavior, you're supposed to be doing your devotions, you're supposed to be doing your Bible story, chances are it's because you're failing to have their attention during that initial little window that you have. Now, I'd be lying to you if I told you that we learned this the easy way. The first couple years that my husband and I were teaching in ministry, it was a little rough. We had issues with behavior. I remember one time we got our materials from Abeka, and we were brand new to the Abeka program. If you've not had Abeka, then you may not know exactly what I'm talking about, but their lessons are pretty long for the age group that they're teaching, and it's a lot of reading if you just like read the book. So we thought, oh, that's awesome. They have all these points already for us. We're just going to read the story to these kids. It was the worst lesson we've ever taught. One time was enough for us to realize that was bad. That was not how we should teach it at all. And so then we kind of came up with these 6 points, and we've been running with them ever since. But I can tell you, we had 4th, 5th, and 6th graders for this one little class. We had kids yawning. We had kids tipping their chair back. We had kids like poking each other because they were just bored out of their minds. We could not even get mad at them because it was absolutely our fault. Now, once we got the flow down, then we had no issues, hardly at all, in our junior church, in our Sunday school, when it came to behavior, discipline, that kind of stuff. The reality is we live in a world where kids are used to being entertained. So unfortunately, we have to compete with that. We get up in front of our own kids or in front of other people's kids, and automatically they are going to give us as much energy as we're giving them. If we are getting up and we're not prepared, we have not covered all of our bases, guess what? They're not going to pay attention. They're not going to listen. They're probably not going to give us the time of day. The funniest thing I hear when my husband and I teach is, you guys like go overboard with your preparation. And there's a reason that we do so well in front of these kids, and they actually listen to us because we do go overboard. There's no such thing as going overboard. There is a such thing as being prepared enough to where your kids notice right away, man, these people actually care about me. Like, they came in clutch and they are prepared for whatever we throw at them. We're going to sit and actually pay attention. So don't be afraid of going overboard. That's not a thing. Follow the 6 points, deliver really awesome lessons, and let God work through you and work through your preparation to bless, again, those little humans that he has entrusted into your care. So I hope that this was an educational lesson, and I hope to hear from you over at Helping Hearts Homeschool on how you put this into practice in your own home or your own junior church service. Do not forget to go over to the corresponding blog, grab the extra trainings and stuff we have over there, but also grab the free lesson plan template that I have for you that goes through those 6 points. All you have to do is fill in the Bible story, the illustration, the snack, and you can print that off and use it every single week if you want to. You can tweak it to fit, again, whatever ministry or whatever class size or family size that you have, but it takes the guesswork out of lesson planning when it comes to Bible stories and honestly anything. You can take that template and you can create a history lesson. You can do a science lesson. You can do an English lesson. Following these 6 steps is not just work for Bible. It works for literally any lesson that you want your kids to really be plugged into. So have an awesome rest of your week, and I will see you over on Instagram.